Fantastic. Let me turn that on. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Katie. I'm one of the careers consultants here at the Imperial Careers Service. And with me today, I've got Madeline, who is also one of our careers consultants. She's going to co-present with me. And in the background, we've got Jess, who is going to be answering all your questions. So if you have any questions at any point on the session, please do feel free to drop them in the chat, and Jess will answer them straight away for you if we're able to. We may talk about a few things that you're asking questions about in the future. So just be aware that Jess might say, oh, they're going to talk about that in a minute. So there's a couple of things around Jobs Live, Jess, that we mention, but then don't talk about and clarify till later on. So just to let you know. So before let us get started, let me just go back. So for those of you that haven't used Mentimeter before, this is a tool that a lot of our Masters lecturers use, actually. So you're getting a little bit of a chance to have a go with some of the technology that you might use when you arrive at Imperial. Please do feel free to log in. The idea of Mentimeter is it's quite interactive. It allows you to kind of like things. It allows you to get involved. I've got some questions that we're going to ask throughout the presentation. So please do feel free to log in. In the corner, you'll see a little thumbs up. That's if you hear us and you know if you like what we're talking about. Now, if you can't hear us, there's a little question mark. So please do push the little question mark if you can't hear us. What I'm going to suggest is that if you can't hear us, or if for some reason the slides don't move forward, then the best thing to do, or the easiest thing to do, is leave the session and come back in again. Okay. Usually, unless there's lots of people who can't see the slides moving forwards, it's something to do with your Teams at your end. And we do know that Teams plays up every now and again. So please do feel free to leave and come back in again. I've turned the lobby off, so you'll get straight back into the session, and everything will be fine. But as I already mentioned, please feel free to drop messages to Jess in the chat if anything doesn't make sense or if you want some clarification. The other thing I'll say just before we launch out, if we have any master students from the business school on this call, business school master students have their own career service. So you can access some parts of our career service, but not everything. You will have your own business school career service, and Jess will hopefully pop the link to that business school career service in the chat at some point, just to let you know, so you can go and see what you're able to access through them. Okay, so without further ado, I shall launch into our session today. So our whole aim of running this session almost basically a month before you arrive at Imperial is to help you kind of hit the ground running. So we know that as master's students, you're probably only here for a year. Some of you may be here on the 2-year master's programs. Brilliant. You've got a little bit more time to get all this stuff done, but we know that many of you are only here for a year. And this has an impact in the sense that a lot of the jobs and a lot of the PhDs that are advertised in the UK are starting to be advertised very shortly. So in terms of those timescales, that's the first thing I'm going to run through, is when are jobs advertised in the UK, when are PhDs advertised in the UK, because we absolutely don't want you guys to miss those. And so this is one of our reasons for running this session a little bit earlier. Also, we just wanted to let you know about our career service and what we have on offer. A lot of what we have on offer, you can start to access now. So you can start to get yourself a little bit more prepared, so that when you arrive at Imperial and you're having to make applications for what you might be doing next year after you leave your masters, you've got a little bit more prepared than you may have if you didn't know about what we've got on offer. And then I'm finally going to run through some of the resources that you might find useful. And I split those into resources you can use now and resources that you will have access to when you join us on the 2nd of October at Imperial. Okay, so that's our plan for today. Now, I've already hinted at the fact, oh, actually, sorry, I've got this slide first. It'd be really good. We know that a lot of our master's students come from everywhere across the world. So it'd be fantastic if you're logged into Menti and are able just to drop a pin on where you are from. Canada. That must be a little bit early in the morning, I imagine, for Canada, potentially. Um, we had quite a lot of North Americans in our session last night at 6 o'clock, which I think is probably about midday or early morning for you guys. So I'm guessing it's probably quite late at night there. So well done for 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 staying up for us. Oh, we've got someone from the Caribbean islands. Amazing. You may have recognized or noticed that my accent isn't from the UK. I'm actually from New Zealand originally. And so I'm always intrigued to see if there's anyone from my side of the world over there. We haven't had anyone from Australia yet, but we've got a few people looking like sort of coming from the Philippines and Papua New Guinea and places. Maybe not Papua New Guinea quite so much, but definitely some people from the Southern Hemisphere joining us, which is brilliant. Um, but as with all of our sessions, we've still got the majority of folk joining us from the UK, but only just in this one, doesn't it? It looks like we've got 4 people from sort of Spain, maybe France. The blobs are quite big, so it's a bit hard for me to differentiate Europe. Cool, yep, definitely someone from the Philippines, Thailand maybe coming in there. Amazing. Indonesia, fantastic. Okay, team. So as you can see straight away, oh, someone from Iceland. I went to Iceland last year, loved it. Fantastic range of people. As you can see, when you come to Imperial, you're going to get to meet a whole lot of different cultures. One of the things that Imperial prides itself on is actually we've got one of the largest amount of student societies, clubs and student societies of many universities in London. And a lot of those clubs and societies are related to where it was that you originally came from. So there is an Australasian society, or there was last year. So if you are feeling a little bit homesick, you're more than welcome to join the club and society from the country you're from. Go along, and usually they share food and have a chat in different languages. So yeah, that's a nice tip, a good way to meet people as well, if you're looking for some mates when you arrive at Imperial. So thank you very much for doing that for us. As I said previously, I've already hinted at the fact that some of the timescales for UK applications are quite early. And we're starting to see a lot of applications opening now even. So I've put October, November, December, but some of the bigger companies open early. So what I mean by bigger companies and this idea of graduate recruitment, lots of big multinational national companies will take on a lot of graduates. So we're thinking about big firms like some of the banking firms, Goldman Sachs, some of the pharmaceutical firms, AstraZeneca, GSK, some of the big engineering firms, Mott MacDonald, Arup, and some of the consultancy firms, so BCGs, McKinseys, PwCs. So a lot of those multinational companies, they know that they're going to need a whole lot of new graduates come July and September next year. And so they will recruit a year in advance so that they have got those people to come in once you finish your masters and you join that graduate recruitment program. The other thing that tends to recruit a little bit earlier is funded PhDs. And this is all to do with when funding has been allocated to universities and PhDs are available. So we tend to see them a little bit later than the sort of September, October that we're starting to see some of these big recruitment firms going with. Generally, PhDs might start sort of mid-October through to December-ish for the funded PhDs, or the bulk of the funded PhDs, but you can absolutely apply for funded PhDs throughout the year. It's just that at the start, we tend to see quite a few more. So if you're thinking about wanting to work for one of these bigger companies, or if you're thinking you might be interested in looking at funded PhDs as your next step after your master's, please make sure that you are aware of these recruitment timelines and you can start to look into it now. As I mentioned, this is just for the UK. So we know that different countries have very different recruitment timelines, even for big multinational companies. So I helped in about March or April, I was helping a student apply for McKinsey in Germany. So Europe tend to go a little bit later in their graduate recruitment. And America is quite often a little bit earlier, and but they have a whole different system, which Madeline's going to mention as well. If you're from my end of the world, then the different, very different timelines, because the university year is run on a different scale. So just be aware that if you're wanting to work in the UK after you've left university, then these are the timescales that you're starting to look at. But don't panic, because if you're not ready to apply just yet, we always get a load of our graduates working at smaller companies, and generally smaller employers tend to recruit a little bit later. So as you can see from this kind of timeline, maybe after Christmas, right through till, in fact, I think we've got lots of small employees still recruiting at the moment. So smaller employers don't tend to have the budget that a large employer would have. They might not necessarily know what their workflow is going to look like and how many graduates they're going to need to take on to help them with that workflow. So that's why smaller employers tend to go a little bit later. So if you're not quite ready, or you don't want to work for a large employer, I mean, they're not for everybody. We've got some information on our website actually about the differences between working for large employers and smaller employers. You don't necessarily need to rush into this if you don't want to. PhDs, I haven't got that bar on here, but that spans basically the whole of this year group. Sorry, this whole year. So PhDs are recruited for the entire year, but as I mentioned, a lot of the bulk funded ones will be coming up in the next few months. Okay. Now, I've mentioned in this slide some of these assessment centres and interviews. I'm going to talk you through that process, because I think that can sometimes take quite a while. But first, I just wanted to let you know about a few dates that you can start to put in your diary now. So obviously, when employers are interested and have jobs, they will want to get in touch with students. And so we run almost as soon as you arrive a whole lot of various different careers fairs where you can come along, you can meet a range of employers. We generally have 50 to 60 employers at most of our careers fairs, apart from the engineering and technology careers fair, which is much bigger because obviously we are quite a STEM focused university. This is where the pharmaceutical companies come as well. So this fair tends to be about 80 to 90 employers coming along for that one, which is why it runs a little bit longer, so you have a chance to visit them if you want to. Now, these careers fairs, some of them you don't need to book for. The two that you will need to book for are the finance and banking fair, and the second one is the life and health sciences careers event. You can't book for them yet, so we have a system called Jobs Live, which Madeline's going to tell you about when she talks about the career service, and that is how you book for these events. But unfortunately, we can't give you access until you're fully enrolled, which is what happens on the 2nd of October when you arrive. Okay, so just make a note of these fairs at the moment. There was confusion yesterday. We haven't quite updated our website about the Life and Health Sciences careers event yet. It does say you don't need to book. You will need to book this year because we're going back to an in-person event, whereas last year it was online, so you didn't need to book. Okay, so we'll get that fixed on the website as soon as possible. Just make a note of these. As I said, I'm going to send you all the slides and the recording and the handout, hopefully this afternoon, maybe tomorrow. It might take us a little while to get the recording up, so you'll get all this information so you can see these dates again. Now, just to give you an idea of some of the employer presentations. So yes, we have lots of big careers fairs, as you've just seen, but also employers are really interested in coming along and talking to you on a one-to-one basis. So quite often you will see a program of employer presentations. Again, you book onto these via Jobs Live, which Madeline's going to tell you about. And these are the employers that have come to meet our students or done an online presentation over the last couple of years, just to give you a feel for them. It's definitely not all of them, but I just picked out a few. So you can see the range of employers that are interested in hiring students from Imperial, from the whole range of backgrounds too. So you can see that there's a whole lot of different big firms, big multinational firms. Alongside that, we also have employer presentations from smaller firms, and there is a careers fair that is run by a biotechnology society that everyone is invited to, and we'll let you know about in November. That is the majority of that is much smaller employers. So stay tuned for more information on how to not miss those updates of when things are happening. Madeline's going to cover that in her session. So I said I'd take you through the selection process. Now, when I say I'll take you through the selection process, this is just an example selection process. So in a similar way to when you applied for masters applications, you would have had to have filled in a separate application for each university you applied for a masters at, and you probably needed to provide slightly different things because each university makes up its own application process or its own selection process. And a similar thing happens with each company that you're going to come across. So this, what I'm showing you here is one that is a relatively straightforward one, but obviously quite a few employers make tweaks to this. If you're applying for a particular role, they might include things like technical interviews or technical assessments as well. So it depends a little bit on what that employer needs you to prove to show that you can do the job. So just to take you through sort of a standardized, I guess, selection process. Generally, you will be asked to fill in some sort of initial approach. So quite often that might be an application form. Sometimes it's a CV and a cover letter. Sometimes they just want you to send a CV. Sometimes it's an application form and a CV. So employers can use a mix and a match of these particular documents to get that initial information that they need from you, so that you can show them that you are interested in that role. Then quite often, especially with bigger firms, so this is a little bit less common with PhDs, but with bigger firms, you'd definitely, you'd be more likely to get what we call an online psychometric test. And those psychometric tests will differ depending on the role you're applying to. So I've mentioned a few different ones here, so numerical, verbal reasoning, critical thinking, but actually there's also situational judgment tests that we've seen being used. There's proofreading tests, there's kind of those logic tests again. So it depends a little bit on what the employer wants to see from you. And generally what happens is you submit your first application of whatever mix up of application form, CV, cover letter that is, and then they'll send out a link to do and complete some psychometric tests. You'll usually be given a time limit to do that. The good news is the Career Service has got all sorts of support on its website, which Madeline's going to talk about in a minute, about how you can get prepared for those psychometric tests. Now, the bottom two lines here, interviews and assessment centres, sometimes they swap places depending on the company, but quite often what you'll find is a company, once you've completed the application and any sort of psychometric test, will then send you a pre-recorded interview. So these are becoming more and more common. Basically, you'll get an interview. Some of you may have had them for your master's application actually, but you'll get you'll get sent a link, you log into that link, it will have a question there and then it will record you answering that question. Okay, so these are becoming more and more common within employer interview stages. However, sometimes you may have a chance to talk to a real person. And again, the Career Service has got lots of support to help you with those interviews. And sometimes the final stage is an assessment centre. Now, this can be online, but it can also be in person, depending on how the company prefers to do that. It's usually slightly longer, so you might be looking at sort of half a day, and you would be expected to complete a range of activities within that. Sometimes presentations are really common. Sometimes you have to do a presentation as part of an interview as well. There's quite often a group activity if you're working in a team, that's really common. So you'll be put in a group and asked to solve a problem of some description and then maybe present it back to the interviewers. Or a case study, which case study interviews are becoming more and more common with consultancies, firms in particular, but they are being used with some of the big pharmaceuticals and some of the engineering firms as well. And what happens in a case study is you're generally given some information, and then you'll be asked to give your recommendations of what you think the people in that case study should do. So there's lots of different iterations of that. But as I said, we've got support on our website, and we run sessions for all of these things to help you prepare the best you can. And Madeline's going to talk about those in a minute. But just to give you an idea of what you may need to be going through at the same time as starting at Imperial. So this is why we do the sessions. So the more you can prepare in advance, hopefully the easier this is going to be to manage in terms of getting your time management correct. Okay, so just before I do hand over to Madeline, it's always really nice to see how people are feeling about starting Imperial. Now, I myself am starting a master's this year at Imperial as well. It's in learning and teaching, so not sciencey. But I know exactly how I feel. And yes, excited is one of those words, but there's also another one that I'm feeling. Intimidated, I think that's absolutely fine. Nervous is the other one I'm feeling. Yes, I'm feeling excited and nervous. So I absolutely get that. And I think that whenever you start something new or scared, hopefully we've got some stuff in the rest of the session that can help you with the intimidated and the scared and the nervous. And yes, it is a bit sad that summer ends, although if you've been in the UK for the last little while, summer really hasn't happened that much. So if you're in one of those lovely countries with great weather, then please please make the most of it, because the UK weather is one of the things I'm not massively once in a lifetime opportunity. That's a really big one. Brilliant. Imposter syndrome. We've got some stuff that hopefully can help with that a little bit. Shukith. I don't know what that means, but I think it sounds like it might be good and bad. I don't really know. It's always good to see that sort of excited is dominating in terms of those numbers. It is really exciting. I like curious, anxious is absolutely fair enough, intimidated and nervous. I think whenever we start something new, it's really normal to have all of these feelings. But this is why we wanted to run this session sort of a month in advance to help give you some resources that can assist with hopefully calming the nerves a little bit, helping with some of that sort of imposter syndrome, intimidated. And for guys who are feeling imposter syndrome, probably doesn't help all that much, but just to let you know that our academics don't accept people that they don't think can do the course. So you've made it past one of the biggest hurdles already. So please do feel a little bit of pride within that. Okay, team. So I am now going to hand over to Madeline. Thank you very much for sharing your feelings with us. Let me come back on here and I will turn off my mic. All good to go.
Thank you, Katie. So I'm going to talk you through a little bit of an introduction to the Career Service at Imperial, what it does, and also how you can engage with us and how you can keep up to date with all of the things that are happening. So could we have the next slide, Katie? So I thought it'd be really nice to put some faces to the name. So this is a picture of all of our team of careers consultants. There's 6 of us. Each one of us looks after a set of departments. Okay, so I look after the chemistry, the materials and the maths departments, but all of the departments at Imperial will have a designated careers consultant who will come into the department, who will give talks and who will liaise with the department to make sure that you get the information that you need. In the central service, so in our careers service on campus, we will see students from all different departments. So you may actually come and visit us and see any of the team. There's also quite a few people behind the scenes who you're less likely to actually meet, but who do lots of really good work in making sure that we can put on these careers events and to make sure that everything runs really smoothly for you. So the next slide, please. So I thought it'd be useful to give you a rundown of the types of things that we do as a career service. This is because you might have been coming from a different university in the UK, which maybe works a little bit differently, or from a different country where your university has worked a bit differently with careers, or you might not have been in education for a while. So things might have changed since you were a student. So One of the main things we do is we give you opportunities to actually meet employers and learn about the opportunities that are available to you. One of the ways, as Katie said, that we do this is by organising big careers fairs. So those take place in large rooms with lots of employers and lots of students all attending at once. And we have given you some dates for those that are happening in the autumn term. We also have those happening in the rest of the academic year as well. In between those career fairs, individual employers often choose to give their own presentations, and we coordinate those for the college. So we will have a big calendar of all of the sort of presentations that are happening, and you can keep up to date with who's going to be on campus and who's going to be giving talks through us. So what we do is every week we will send out a weekly newsletter on a Thursday, and I'm going to tell you in a minute how to sign up for that newsletter, but that's a really good way to find out about those careers fairs and presentations. We also host a jobs board. So there's lots of employers out there who really want to attract the attention of Imperial students and graduates, and they will send us at the Careers Service their advertisements for internships, work experience, placements, and graduate jobs. So we host that jobs board, and again, I'm going to tell you in a minute how you can actually access that information and keep an eye on that jobs board. I always do say to students, though, don't rely only on that particular Imperial Careers jobs board. It's a really good place to start and keep an eye on, but there will be companies out there who would still love to hear from you, but haven't necessarily thought to send us their specific vacancies. So we can also advise you on other places out there to look for those opportunities. A big part of what we do is help you to learn how to make really good, successful applications. So all of the things that are involved with that, how to put together a really good CV, cover letter, personal statement, how to do really well in job interviews or psychometric tests. So we spend lots of time keeping in touch with employers and with recruitment practices and what's happening right now out there so that we can give you the most up-to-date information. We try to also give you opportunities to connect with alumni. So we do things like career panel events where you can hear from people who are doing the sorts of jobs that you might be interested in doing. And you can hear their tips and why they chose that career direction and what they enjoy about it and so on. So overall, our aim is to help you to plan your career. So don't worry if you don't know at all what you want to do, or if you're just thinking about ideas. We're very happy to sort of work with you on that, and you can come and talk to us about that, all the way through to knowing what you want to do but not quite sure how to get there, to how to make those good applications, how to do interviews. And we even have some students come to talk to us when they get more than one job offer and they're not sure which one to choose. Okay, so all the way through that process, we're here to support you. So next slide, please. So this slide is designed to give you some ideas on how to make the most of the service, because as you can imagine, there's lots of students at Imperial and we're quite in demand. So we want to give you some different ways to interact with us so that you can actually make the most of our service. So one of the things that sometimes people do is they come straight to the idea that they'll just book an appointment to have a one-to-one consultation with us. Especially at busy times of year like October, those one-to-one appointments can get very booked up very quickly. So I want to give you some other ways to interact with us as well. So at the top of this triangle, we've got the Careers Service website. So the website has got the advantage of it's always there, it's always on. So 24/7, every day of the week, you can, if you suddenly decide at 1 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday that you're going to start working on your career, you can come and look at the website. Lots of students, they do overlook it, okay, so they just sort of skip past that, but actually there's loads and loads of really valuable information on there. And it may be that you can get your questions answered very quickly just by looking at the website. We also have these careers fairs and employer events. So these happen all year round, but we do have a peak in those events in the autumn and spring terms. It gets a little bit more quiet towards the summer term, and over the summer vacation, we don't run those employer events because lots of students aren't on campus at that time. So if you want to make the most of those chances of meeting employers, I would say try to engage early while those events are happening. It's quite difficult once you're past the stage of being a student to get these opportunities to actually meet different employers and hear about different careers. So it's a really good perk of being a student, of taking advantage of these opportunities to hear about different types of work. I would encourage you to be really open-minded. Okay, so you don't have to know you want to do something before you come to hear a company tell you about what they do. Okay, so come along to things, be open-minded, be interested. You never know, you might get a surprise. You might come to a talk and suddenly think, oh my goodness, I didn't know that existed. And that's a really interesting type of work that I would be really interested in going into. Seminars and workshops. So all of the classic careers topics, we do sessions, 1 hour workshops where you can come along and you can learn about them. So we don't restrict your attendance on those at all, so you can come to as many of those as you want. And we run them repeatedly all the way through the year, including in the vacations. So you have lots and lots of opportunities to come to those workshops. If you see one's happening and you can't make that time or that day, don't worry, it will come up again, and we do them constantly all year round. And then at the bottom of that triangle, we've got one-to-ones. So that's the opportunity to come and have a one-to-one conversation with a professional careers consultant. And you have the opportunity to do that throughout the time of you being at Imperial, and also for 3 years after you graduate, after you finished your course. Our one-to-ones, we are there to be neutral. We're not going to push you in any particular direction. We're not going to try and make you do what we think is best for you. We're there to support you and to be a sounding board, and to be someone that you can discuss your career questions with. I would recommend, if you try to use some of the other resources like the website and things, it means that when you come to a one-to-one appointment, you've maybe answered some of the more obvious questions, and that we can focus that time on the things that are a little bit more difficult to get answers to, a little bit more personal to you. Okay, but as I say, that service is there for you, and you're very welcome to come, even if you're just saying, I just don't know where to start and I'm not sure what to do. So next slide, please. So this is just a screenshot of the website, just to show you what it looks like, so you can recognise it when you find your way there. If you look along the top of that website, there's some headings which say About Us, Plan Your Career, Jobs and Experience, What's On, Applications and Interviews, Information for Employers. Okay, so those sections, if you press on those buttons there, a big menu will open up, and there's lots and lots of information in there on all the aspects of careers that we've already mentioned today. So it's really worth exploring what's on there. On the top right-hand corner, there's the Sign into Jobs Live link. Okay, so one thing to notice is you can access everything on the website now before you actually start as a student, but Jobs Live you can only start using from the first day of term. So next slide, please. So Jobs Live is the system that we use to enable you to book with us, and we host our job adverts, and you can make those appointments, those one-to-one appointments on that system. So I would recommend that you make a little diary note to yourself on Monday, the 2nd of October, to set up your profile on Jobs Live. It's a very quick job. It won't take you lots of time, but if you do that on Monday, the 2nd of October, or shortly after that, you will then be able to see the full range of those events that are happening. You'll be able to book appointments. You'll have access to that job vacancy system. You'll be able to set up your preferences so that you can get email alerts. If we go to the next slide. And one of those preferences is about how we can contact you. So when you set up your profile, make sure you tick the box that allows us to send you our weekly newsletter. So that's the absolute best way to keep in the loop about what's happening that's careers related at Imperial. So we send out that newsletter every Thursday. It's quite long. It's got lots of things in it, so just warning you in advance. Obviously, there will be times in your course where you're probably a bit too busy to properly read that newsletter, but if you've signed up to receive it, then you know that every Thursday you will get that newsletter. You will hear about everything that's happening, and you can come back to it when you're ready. We do have employers that are quite last minute, they tell us about something that's happening quite shortly before it happens. So what's on our diary does change from week to week. So rather than sort of just looking at the beginning of term and then leaving it, I would say to you, keep checking that weekly newsletter, because it will sort of change as we go along. Next slide, please. So this is a set of titles of our workshops. So we've got all of those kind of classic topics: application forms, assessment centres, career planning, CVs and cover letters, interviews, LinkedIn, how to make the most of LinkedIn for your networking, an introduction to postgraduate study. And we actually also have a longer workshop, which is should I PhD or not, which we do as well, and psychometric tests. So all of these workshops on this slide, they're 1 hour long, and they're free, and you can come as many times as you like. There's no restriction on that. And we do repeat them over and over again through the year. So we will announce those workshops in that weekly newsletter as well. So next slide, please. And finally, there's the one-to-one appointments. Okay, so these become available to book the day before at 7 o'clock in the morning on Jobs Live. At busy times of the year, and we're already in that busy time of the year, you may need to go on at 7 o'clock to get one of these appointments. If you go on and there's no appointments listed, that's not that we're not offering them, because we offer them every working day. It's just that they've already been booked. But then if you come on the next morning at 7 o'clock, there'll be a new set that have been put on for the next day. Okay, so if you persist, you will be able to get an appointment with us. But just to warn you that at busy times of the year, like September, October, November, it does get quite busy and it's difficult sometimes to get that booking. We do a mixture of online and in person, so you have the option, and you can book to see any member of the team. We do restrict this one, okay, because there is a limited number of us. So you're allowed up to 3 of these every 90 days, basically, and then the system won't let you book again until gone past that 90 days, and then you'll be able to have another 3. The appointments are 25 minutes long. Okay, so you have quite a lot of those appointments over the course of your time at Imperial and after you finish. So, but you can't have them all together. You can't come see us every day for a week, for example. Okay. Now, what do people come to discuss in these appointments? It's absolutely up to you. There's no agenda from us. It's very flexible. They're completely confidential, so we're not going to the department to tell them anything that you've talked about with us, and we're not going to push you in any direction or another direction. Okay, so it's flexible. It's totally fine to come if you just don't know where to start, don't know what to do, or with any specific questions that you have. So the only thing to bear in mind is that limitation that you have of 3 every 90 days. So next slide, please. So I'm just going to finish off before handing over to Katie again with just a few tips really about careers that we thought might be useful for you. So the first one is just a recognition that, this is a very busy time for you. Starting a new course, maybe even starting to live in a new country for you. So you'll have lots on your mind, lots of things to do. Just to let you know, we put these sessions in at this time of year because we want you to know about the early deadlines, but you're not obliged to go on the job market straight away as soon as you start your course, and not everybody is ready to do it at that point. So we just want you to be informed that there will be some of these opportunities being advertised as early as now. But if you decide it's better for you to focus on your studies or take a little bit more time to decide what you want to do with your next steps after you study, then that's absolutely fine. As I said, we support you for 3 years after you graduate as well. So some people will focus on their masters first and maybe then come and sort of attend and come to the career service, maybe even after they've graduated. It does help to have a bit of a focus for what you want to apply for. So rather than feeling a sense of panic and I have to just go and just looking at everything and getting a bit overwhelmed, taking that time to reflect on what it is you're really looking for and exploring, and then developing a bit of a focus. Everyone's focus is going to be different. Focus on, it might be involved in a role, a particular type of job, it could be a particular type of company, it could be a particular location. So it's up to you to develop the kind of focus that will suit you. But the reason that can help is because it avoids you then having to look at all of the jobs that are being advertised in the world, and you know that you're looking at a particular subsection of jobs. Once you start making applications, whether that's pretty much straight away or whether you're going to come back and do that a bit later on, later in your course or even after you graduate, it always helps to make targeted applications. So that means, the application has to be written specifically for that job and specifically for that company. you should never be sending the same CV everywhere or the same cover letter everywhere. So every year we find some students who've gone onto the job market, maybe they haven't been very focused and they've just sent the same CV everywhere or the same letter everywhere. And then they get a bit disappointed because they don't get very good results from that. It's quite a lot of effort spent without a lot of payback. So trying to get that focus and then trying to develop targeted applications is absolutely fine to send fewer applications, but make them more high quality applications. The very first targeted application you create will feel like it takes an awfully long time, and you might think, oh my goodness, I can't keep doing this because I've got other things to do. But just rest assured, you will get quicker as you get more used to doing it. Okay. Obviously, there's some advantages to applying to similar companies. So if you do lots of research into an area of work, for example, you decide I want to be an accountant and you learn all about that, then actually you can get lots of benefits then from applying to lots of those types of companies, rather than just constantly going to various things and different things where you have to start your research from scratch each time. Be really organised. So whenever it's ready for you to go onto that job market, you're sort of approaching it in a very organised way. Have a spreadsheet, keep track of everything that you're applying to, save the job adverts, save everything that you send for each particular job. And that means that when you get called for an interview later on, you can very quickly remind yourself about what that job is and what that company is and what they already know about you. So that will really speed things up for you. The other benefit of that is that you can start to get a bit of a data set really of how your job applications are going. And we do find that sometimes students can then identify where the bottleneck is. So they might find that they never get past the first stage. They then work a bit harder at that stage, maybe polishing up those CVs and cover letters a bit more. And then they might find they're getting through that first stage, but maybe getting stuck at psychometric tests. They do a little bit more work on that, and then they start to get through that stage. And so it's little by little, they're learning those skills and starting to get better results. No one gets all of the jobs that they apply for, okay? And if anyone did have that result, I would say that's probably not a good sign because it means they're not being ambitious enough, okay? So you want to be applying for things which are going to give you that opportunity to grow and do things that, you know, are challenging to you. So that does mean that there's going to be a little bit of rejection along the way. So we've all experienced that. It's not pleasant for anyone, but it is a normal part of the process. Great attitude to have is I'm going to learn as I go along. Okay, you can accelerate your learning by reflecting as you go. Okay, so not just mindlessly sending out lots of applications, but really sort of keeping track of it, reflecting on it, how you feel about it, what have you learned, for example, from an interview process, and then you can apply that for the next interview that you have, and that really accelerates your learning. And we can help you again with that reflection, and that's something that we will do sometimes with people in those one-to-one appointments, is we'll help them to reflect on the experiences that they've had and what they can learn from that. So next slide, please. So I know that not everyone here is going to be going onto the job market. So some of you will be going into further study at the end of your masters. So a common misconception is that the career service is here just to help people who are going into the job market. But actually at Imperial, a very large number of the students actually go into further study. And so we're very used to supporting students with that. If you're thinking about a PhD, we have a workshop, should I PhD or not? And we have lots of experience of supporting people who are thinking of that direction. A common question for master's students is this kind of problem of like, when should I apply? Because you might feel right at the start of your master's, you're not quite ready to make that application for a PhD. You haven't done your master's project yet. You don't know your supervisors well enough to get a good reference and so on. So what I'd say to you is you want to take the time you need to make sure you're clear about what kind of PhD you want to do and you're set up to make those successful applications. Some people will be ready to do that towards the start of their master's study, and you know those deadlines will be happening throughout the autumn, but there are PhD deadlines that happen later in the year. And also some people choose to complete their masters and then apply for a PhD, so they maximise the impact of the work that they've done on the masters, and they have more time to really explore the kind of research direction they want to do. So that's absolutely fine to choose to do that. And I would always say to someone thinking of a PhD, there's no need to absolutely rush into that. You are committing to quite a long period of study, And, it would set the direction of your research career as well, what you choose. So this is a great moment to shop around and really think about the type of PhD you want to do, think about different institutions, different countries, different supervisors, different research directions. Networking is a really good idea. And when you're at Imperial, it's a really good time to be doing that networking. So Imperial is a research intensive university, and it's got really world leading experts in all sorts of research areas who will be your professors, who will be your personal tutors and things like that. So this is a really great moment to really meet people and talk to them. And if you're interested in further research or interested in a PhD, don't be afraid to talk to your personal tutor about that. Don't be afraid to talk to your lecturers and get their advice and their tips. So all of these expert researchers will be also very well networked themselves across the world with people doing this type of research. They may be able to let you know what emerging, exciting research directions are happening, or what good research groups would be for you to look into working with. Okay, so networking while you're at Imperial, taking the time to think about the kind of research you want to do and not feeling that you have to rush into it. We are here to support you with that thinking, but also we're very used to seeing those applications for PhDs. So you're very welcome to bring a personal statement to us to get us to read it through. We're not experts in any of your research areas, and we don't pretend to be, but so we can't offer that perspective, but maybe someone in your network can. But what we can do is help you to have that feedback from someone who isn't a specialist in that area, which can be very useful when you're applying, because it may be read by someone who needs to have that ability to understand the research that you're wanting to do from an outside perspective. So next slide, please. So that's it from me. I'm going to hand back over to Katie for the final part of the session.
Hi team, it looks like we've got some action happening in the chat, which is great. Looks like Jess is up to date with all of that. So please do feel free to drop those questions in the chat. We're sort of on the last 5 to 10 minutes now. So if you've got that burning question and you haven't had it answered yet, please do pop it in the chat, and both Madeline and Jess will be working on that chat now. So we can get those answered while you still have the chance. So in this section, I just want to take you through a few of the resources that you will have available to you. Some of them are available now, some of them are available once you join us on the 2nd of October. And so my last two slides are sort of like the summary of kind of things you can do now and things you can do once you join us on the 2nd of October. So from us, from the Career Service, we offer you a range of tools that you can access through our website that will be really useful for you as you go through that process of applying for jobs or PhDs. So the ones on the left-hand side, or on my left-hand side, are the three, so Shortlist Me, Student Circus and Going Global. These are three services that we pay for you guys to have. So you can't access these until the 2nd, until you can log in. But these are all really interesting tools with different focuses. So Shortlist Me is the one that I mentioned, doing those pre-recorded interviews. So Shortlist Me can help you with practice pre-recorded interviews. Student Circus, now this is specifically, it's more of a job board, but it's very useful for international students who are looking for sponsorship in the UK. So they have, Student Circus have curated a jobs board where they advertise roles that have an offer international students visas to work in the UK. So that's a really useful one if you're an international student. Going Global is a little broader. So the Going Global focuses more on helping everybody work in an international market if they want to. So they've got a lot of student profiles of different countries. They talk about how to get visas in those countries. They talk about what various industries are in those countries, and sort of things like the cost of living, and can really help you with moving abroad if you're interested in working abroad. So slightly different, the Student Circus and Going Global, but both very useful. Those ones you'll need to wait. But the CV and cover letter booklet, that's accessible now from our website, and you can find in there a whole lot of example CVs and cover letters, just to give you an idea of the type of CV you may need. So this is something that you could start to work on now if you wanted, especially if you've got a CV from a different country. So UK CVs are sometimes slightly different from other countries. So definitely worth a look, just to see how your CV might stack up against a CV in the UK, and think about how you could adapt that now if you were thinking that you may apply for PhDs or jobs in the not too distant future. So that's services from us. We've obviously got a load more, which is Madeline has told you about, but I wanted to also point out a couple of other services that are available from the college as a whole. Now, some of you may have already had an email from the graduate school, and this is a specific area within the college that basically supports you guys. So it supports postgraduate students in lots of different ways. So they run a whole range of different sessions where you can learn some softer skills, like I think they do one on time management. They do a lot of tech related sessions, but they also run, and which we run for them actually, a series of talks that is about careers talks for specifically for master's students. So that sits alongside our careers essentials, which is more general and probably run more frequently. But with the graduate school, we run a series of talks that focus specifically for master's students. So I'm very sure you will have to, you will get an introduction to the graduate school during your induction week or your first week of term. I know that we usually come along to that, so please do come and say hi if you spot us. Also, the graduate school offers online e-learning courses, and I've already had to do the plagiarism one for my masters, so I suspect you guys may have to do that for your masters as well. Okay. Other areas of the college that might be useful for some of you. So if you're an international student, we have the International Student Support Hub or network and service. They can see you on a one-to-one basis if you have questions specifically related to being an international student. We quite often refer students over to them if you've got questions about your visa, so working during your masters or after your masters. We are not the experts on visas, and we really don't want to get it wrong because the repercussions can be hideous and that you might get deported. So we will very quite commonly send you over to the experts to discuss visa issues that you may have or visa questions that you may have. Okay, so that's International Student Services. Again, once you join the college fully, you can book one-to-one appointments with them. The second thing here, the Imperial Success Guide, that's available to you now. It's a whole series of web pages that have got lots of really good content to help you settle in, to help you understand your masters, and to give you some ideas on what you can start to prepare for how that master's program is going to go. Okay. Now, this one is a newer course that's been developed, and I was involved in the development of this particular short course. It's called Attributes and Aspirations, and it was set up partly to help you adapt to becoming a master's student at Imperial. So we have released it now, so it's available to you. You can log in and start working through some of the content. So for you guys that are feeling a little bit nervous, a little bit intimidated, maybe some of that imposter syndrome, please do log in, have a look at some of the introductory content within that. So it can take you through all of the services that you will have access to at Imperial, all of the things that you're going to be able to do. We introduce you to some mock Imperial students that can help you to understand how you might use various different services. But there's also really good content in there that covers your career side of things and your sort of transferable skill development. So Madeline was talking about networking quite a lot. Networking, we've got a whole unit on it. We've got a whole unit on reflection. So I've actually been working with some of the academics to help them adapt some of their some of the essays and assignments that you're going to have to do, and reflections becoming a big part of some of those assessments. So we've also got units that can help you kind of be a better student as well. Things like critical thinking. One of our very popular ones is time management, but these things like project management and decision making, presentations, which will be helpful when you're moving through your master's program and potentially doing your master's project at the end there. So it's available now, and it will be available throughout your masters. We're actually running some very quick 30-minute sessions on how to use attributes and aspirations next week, which you can sign up through the QR code. But you can also just log on through the QR code. Hopefully it's relatively self-explanatory, and you can get started on that now if you want to just help ease yourself into into Imperial life. We've also got another couple of websites that we highlight. These are linked through from our website as well. So if you have a look in the career planning section of our website, we take you through a bit of a model of how you might want to start to plan your career. Obviously, there's no right way to plan your career, but we've given you an example of a model that might work. And part of that is understanding some of those job titles. So in the UK specifically, we have a website called prospects.ac.uk. This has got a massive list of job titles that can help you to understand, if you are becoming a project manager, what sort of things you might do as a project manager, with a whole lot of links off to various different places. You can find more content. And Target Jobs is similar. It has these sorts of job profiles on it as well. So a really nice starting point. And if you check out our website, it puts it into context of how you might use these sorts of websites. But these are available for you now to use. Now, I'm always interested. We talk a lot about LinkedIn, and actually that LinkedIn Career Essentials that Madeline was talking about, it's one of our most popular sessions. How many folk have got a LinkedIn profile? I'm aware that it's not often it's not a big thing in some parts of various different industries, or in some parts of the world you can't have a LinkedIn profile. So please don't feel bad if you don't have one. We're not saying you need to have one. It's just something you might want to have a look at and think about now before you start at Imperial. And for those of you that do have a LinkedIn profile, that can be one of the jobs that you could look at doing now before you begin at Imperial, is kind of updating that, maybe looking at something like attributes and aspirations and thinking about, how do I update it to the point where it's going to be useful for me. So attributes and aspirations does have a whole unit on LinkedIn. Plus we have some content on our website for that too. Okay, so great. Looks like loads of people have them. A couple of people don't. Don't panic if you don't. If you don't want one, I know that some people don't like social media. That's absolutely fine. It's not a compulsory thing, but it can be a very helpful tool to help you explore different roles and different companies. So, and LinkedIn has got a whole lot of content itself. I've just seen the time. Madeline and I have been talking, so we've got 2 minutes left. So I'm just going to run through our final 2 slides. Now, these 2 slides are probably the summary of everything that we've talked about. So this is where we split out what you can do now and what you can do when you arrive on the 2nd of October. So I've just listed here 4 things that could be really helpful for you to start doing now, so that you can kind of feel more secure about joining Imperial, but also be ready for those applications. So check out the careers website, have a look at that attributes and aspirations short course, review your LinkedIn, and then check out the other links which I'm going to send you, which are basically the links we've talked about in this session. So we'll get those through to you tomorrow, hopefully tomorrow, if we can get the upload done. Okay, so that's the sort of things you can start to do now. And then finally, things that you can start to do when term starts. So basically, this is all related to having that login to Jobs Live. So on that first day or in that first week, just make sure you make a note, as Madeline said, to set up your Jobs Live account. Think about booking onto any events or careers essentials, especially if you want to come to our finance fair, which is on the Thursday of the first week. So you'll need to register for that one on that first day, or in that first couple of days. Register for our weekly emails. Now, once you start at Imperial, you'll also have access to LinkedIn Learning, which some of you may have had as an undergraduate. But LinkedIn Learning is a massive suite of training which you can access. It's got loads of stuff around how to upskill in various different technologies, but lots of other content on it. And you have that for the entirety of your master's and a year after you leave as well. And then you'll have career access to other careers resources. So we have a library of some of the employer events that have happened over the last couple of years, which you can then access. It's not all of them, purely because some employers don't give us permission to record them. We've also got 10 minutes with talks, which I know Jess has been creating madly over summer. So 10 minutes with various different alumni who have interesting jobs now that you can listen to. Okay, so that's all I have for you today. I'm aware we're 1 minute over. So what I'm going to do is stop sharing and I'm going to come back and let's have a look at some of those questions that have come out. How have we got on with the questions, Jess?
I think I've managed to put answers in for most of them, but some of them maybe could do with a little bit more detail. So for example, there was a great question about where people should start to find out about the PhD application process, and I recommended coming to one of the PhD or not to PhD sessions. I've recommended find a PhD, but if there's anything either of you would like to add.
Madeline, do you want to take that one? And what I can do is reshare that QR code, which Selena's got a message in here that she hasn't seen. So
Yeah, I mean, something I could add to that is the graduate school does a session called Stepping Up from a Master's to a PhD as well. So, and I know that's going to be coming up in the autumn as well. So I think if you do a sort of combination of looking at findaphd.com is really good. PhD or not is good more for those who sort of not sure whether they want to do a PhD at this stage, and that Stepping Up PhD to masters from the graduate school is a really good course as well. It is a little bit complicated, that whole question of how to apply for a PhD. There's a few different routes. So one would be to apply for it as if you're applying for a job, so you can have those things that are advertised on findaphd.com. Another good website is jobs.ac.uk as well, where you see those PhD opportunities advertised. Another way of doing it is to reach out to potential supervisors and have some conversations and then apply through their university, saying that you want to do a PhD with them. So it's a bit of variety depending exactly on what kind of PhD you want to do and how you want to go about doing it. If you are feeling stuck, you can come and have a one-to-one chat with us about it as well.
There's also some content on attributes and aspirations about the different PhD ways and how to approach someone speculatively, which was more to do with that last one that Madeline was talking about. Plus, there's some stuff on our website, I think. Do we have? I don't know if we
have
do.
a bit, yeah, but I think Find a PhD has got so much good stuff on it that we don't try and replicate that really.
It's got a really good advice section, so they've got a careers advice button on Find a PhD. Definitely check that out. Cool. Was there anything else, Jess, that came up?
I think
we're kind of
I was going to
over
say another
time.
thing that came up, and I did mention it, but just we had a question about finding work as an international student after the MSc, and I just sort of flagged Student Circus as being the new tool that we've got that does some great stuff on actually showing you who will sponsor. So as soon as, again, you get enrolled, you'll be able to sign up to that system as well.
Yeah, and lots of employers themselves will say on their website whether they're able to sponsor visas too. So there is that. We've got a little bit more content on our website about working as an international student and finding that. Oh, I can't grab it at the moment because I'm sharing my window. But we will, if you have a look in our drop down menu, that is, I'm just going to take over this. I don't know if it'll work or not, but we have it in our international students section on our website. There's some info there about visas and finding them. So there we go. Jess is amazing. She's popped it in there. Brilliant. So so yeah, hopefully that will give you a little bit more context for that as well.
And we obviously can't give visa advice, but there is we do have the International Student Support Team here. There's also a really great organisation called UKISA, the UK Council for International Student Affairs, which I will just also link because they I think their website is quite clear about some of that advice. I found that really helpful.
Super, thank you. Right. Well, I am aware that we are 5 minutes over time, which is not something we try to do. The Career Service, we always like to stay on time. So thank you very much for joining us, folk. Jess, Madeline and I will turn our cameras off, but we'll stay on the line for just a couple of minutes if there's any final questions. And as I said, we'll pop through all of the links along with the slides and the recording in the next day, hopefully tomorrow if we get that recording up. If not, it'll be the next day. But good luck, and we look forward to welcoming you all to Imperial next month. So thanks a lot for joining us, and we'll see you then. Cheers, team.